Hey everyone, it's Jim Weiss. Glad to see y'all again. I wanted to introduce my illustrious, infamous, amazing, talented producer, Kate Voss, without whom I could not make this podcast happen. I know Kate many ways, but have gotten to know her mostly through our work on this podcast, making it better and more informative for all of you. The next one up was another book, so we'll hold it up because, all the books need, so people are going to be reading a lot.
They are.
This book is about Audacious Optimism from Shanna Adamic. She's awesome. So she is running the Oracle Foundation, and that was a continuation of, I think, the foundation she was running at her prior company before Oracle Health bought Turner. So that was a big deal and has since continued, which is admirable and exciting. And she goes through her diagnostic journey, much like Jonathan Gluck did in his book and podcast with me. So, it's incredible how many people fumble around for as much as a year or more before they get a fateful diagnosis. Now, in her case, it was a benign tumor that ultimately became life-threatening. Well, she was able to deal with it, but of course caused some levels of paralysis. So she doesn't really dwell on what was. She's looking forward. And her good friend, Stephanie Trunzo, and colleague from Oracle Health, who I know from Merge, another data-driven medical marketing firm out there, that she went from Oracle Health to do that, and talks about why, and the inspiration of working with Shanna, I think, had a lot to do with it, wanting to help patients.
Yeah, they're good friends.
People more directly, right?
And also, she opened up with talking about Shanna. It took 109 doctor's office and ER visits for her to get diagnosed with this tumor on her brainstem. So it's a lot about perseverance is part of Audacious Optimism. Right. And telling the doctors that's not it. She was misdiagnosed, I don't even know how many times, and holding on to the conviction that something's wrong and you need help finding the answer. So I found that to be super, super inspiring. And the work she's doing at Oracle now, I wrote down, they have helped 19,000 children in 107 countries with diseases that they're born with or are diagnosed with at an early age. And often these families don't have enough money. They don't have the resources to help these kids. And it's just really amazing work that she's taken her health journey and used it to help others.
Right, because she could have gotten real bitter and negative about how long it was. But look, they both said that's the mission of Oracle Health and the digital health revolution. And I think what's exciting, the takeaway for me on all of this, especially on this one, is look, the mantra here, take power of your healthcare. You got to take over. There are now new tests, blood, full body scans, all the rest. You can know enough to be dangerous. And I think at this point, the system isn't going to help you. You want to stay out of the system. Once you're in the system, you can assume the system is not there to help you. It's set up to do what it does. So you're going to have to find the way through it. And that's true of maybe a dozen of the podcasts I've done, from Kathy Giusti to the crew from Healthcare Women's Business Association to, so many others that we've talked to, and obviously culminates a little bit with this pair who powerfully talk about how to take back the agency in your health journey, because 109 visits, I did ask her, was that wishful thinking? Of course, what I had with Audra, when we were going through our journey of diagnosis. And ultimately, you don't want to think it's the worst possible thing, but it usually is. And if you catch it early, you can fix it and get on with it.
Yeah, you've been saying that for a while. Staying out of the system is the way. And if you don't stay out of the system, you have to have a team advocating with you.
Right. It's hard. It's hard to do that. Look, it's hard to advocate for all the things, that you want to get in life, but there's nothing more important than your health, and everyone gets hit by the bouncing ball. And in order to really, truly make America healthy again, I'm fully on board with the concept of prevention. An ounce of prevention is a pound of cure. So we do emphasize that here as much as we can. You can't prevent the genetic diseases or some of the other things. You can find out about them much easier. There's lots of incredible genetic testing companies out there, and we're going to be talking to all those people over the next several months. So Keep tuning in, everybody. We'll try to make it fun too. Thanks for both of you being here. We're excited mainly to talk about this book. I'm going to show that because that's what you do. Buy it, read it. Audacious Optimism. God, I love that. Shanna, what the hell does it mean?
Well, there's so much to unpack with that, but I think when it comes down to it is realizing that optimism is an audacious act of bravery and self-trust. And many people relate optimism to a feeling, to happiness, to positivity, and it's none of those things. Optimism at its core is a choice that you have to make for the future. And so it's, something I love talking about, something I apply to my life. And obviously it's something I say is for everyone, because many times I've heard someone say, oh, you naturally have an optimistic personality. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Like, I can't have an optimistic personality because honestly, I feel different ways every time that I choose optimism. So that's just one thing I would try to do, is try and pull a thread of where I learned and lived and experienced optimism through my life. And then where I really found it, which was at one of my darkest moments when I looked in the mirror and didn't know who I was or recognize the girl staring back at me or the person who had grown in her career or the athlete or the mom or anything. And I knew that the next thing I chose was going to change my life. And that's when I realized what audacious optimism was.
Stephanie, thanks for introducing us. Tell me, how did you two meet? How did you two get together?
Probably through a little optimism also. I had launched Oracle Health at Oracle, and it was a phenomenally amazing experience of thinking through what does it mean to take this background I've had in technology and apply it in an industry that was meaningful. And so one of the very first things we did in a matter of months was attack a really giant acquisition of Cerner, so connection to Kansas City. And, one of the, I think, best things that Oracle acquired was our friend Shanna here. So Shanna and I really got to spend a lot of time together throughout the process of that acquisition, working through thinking about what did it mean to take an organization that was so focused on healthcare and an organization that was so focused on technology and find the ways to bring those things together, even though there were some cultural differences, of course. Shanna was a great partner in bringing a lot of the philanthropic thinking, the health equity thinking, the leveling the playing field, that kind of mentality to the conversation. So that was how we got to know each other. And I've been really grateful to be able to continue to stay in touch in a lot of different ways too.
I have to brag on Stephanie for a moment, because from the first moment when I saw Stephanie, it was this like, oh my gosh, she gets the storytelling, and she has this unbelievable way of framing a message. And you just feel like sometimes you meet people that you just gravitate to. And that was Stephanie. So I found a way right away. I was like, I'm going to meet her, and then how can I work with her? So then asked her to be on the board of the foundation that I brought across the acquisition, and she was, but she's a powerhouse. So I was just like, how can I be in her orbit, her space?
Well, I think it's really instructive to my audience, and you guys could cover 27 different topics and themes, from storytelling to how women can support each other in these powerful moments like a merger like that, which I'd love to get into, because do we think tech and healthcare can marry? And I know that's been an ongoing struggle, but I think we're winning, and you two were big pioneers with that. So, I think that's no small thing. I don't want to ride past that too quickly, but I do want to just cover the concept in the book, the idea where mission and purpose cross over, and how you two navigated that in a way that wasn't conflicting, was positive, probably helped the whole merger become more successful. Shanna, how does an NFL cheerleader shift from that into an executive, into an author? Like, tell us a little bit about your journey.
Absolutely. Well, it wasn't one to the next. It was all together. And so from my springboard from college, which, by the way, leaving college, I fully intended to be the next Katie Couric. So I interned for NBC, and they were going to move me to a small market, and I couldn't go at the time for family reasons. And I ended up interviewing for this job for a small philanthropy that was with a company that was digitizing healthcare. And I remember interviewing for them and thinking, oh gosh, like, do I want to jump into this philanthropy side and, really case working and different things? And the person who was interviewing me said to me, listen, I know you've expressed that you want to be a reporter, but I want to teach you how to tell stories that can save people's lives. And it was like that moment, like I didn't know it then, but that moment would have such an impact on the rest of my life. And so from that point on, I started growing in a philanthropy and helping to develop the initiatives and build the fundraising, all those pieces that was removing barriers to healthcare for children worldwide. The same time I was doing that, by day, by night, I had this love for dance and I wanted to stay in it. So I knocked on the door of the NFL, and the year I tried out as one of 6 candidates who made the team and stayed there in the NFL, paralleling that with my growing career and what I was doing. I stayed in the NFL for nearly a decade. And my joke is I stayed so long, Jim, that they nicknamed me the Fossil. And that was actually a compliment because I was 31 cheering next to a 19-year-old who could kick to her face on cue. And I was like, let me stretch out my whole body for 30 minutes. Okay. So I actually take that as a compliment name, but it's interesting how everything really started to weave together between what I was doing and how I was learning to lead this philanthropy, advocate for these children, and really use this strength and what I would call superpower of being able to deliver a message that created cause connection to do something really great for kids and create a bridge from a company digitizing healthcare to philanthropy. And then as I started to end my career cheering, Stephanie knows this story all too well, I started to lose my hearing. And then there at that moment, I entered into my own health journey. This started this serendipitous dance with healthcare. So they weren't ever separate. They were all together.
What was the hearing loss issue? What happened?
I started to lose my hearing on my right side the year that I retired as a cheerleader. And I went and saw someone, talked about it, and they did a test on me. And they said, yep, you're having mild hearing loss. And we're certain it's because you cheered in the loudest stadium in the NFL for nearly a decade. And that felt right until the moment it didn't. And then across the next 6 years of my life, I engaged with my primary care physician, a specialist, or an ER 109 times. And with growing symptoms from hearing loss to dizziness, to severe headaches, to severe vertigo, to wavy vision, to eventually aphasia. And every time I was in to see someone, it was not connected. The story wasn't connected. The pieces weren't connected. I was misdiagnosed, underdiagnosed with everything that you could imagine, even turned away at an ER after they did a brain scan. And they came back and told me that my brain scan looked normal and that I was probably just a tired, overworked mom. Then a year later, pushing one more time, having my story completely together after seeing a celebrity interview on the Today Show. And I went back and I sat down and I read all my pain points like my own story. And I needed them to hear it and really understand. And when I got done, I said, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I think I have a brain tumor. It's like all the knowledge I had gained from working in the space I had, from telling the stories, but then knowing, my right as a patient and really trying to push myself forward. That's what was happening. And the doctor said, I don't think you're crazy. I think I'm supposed to find the answers. And 20 minutes after that MRI sent me to, I got a very different answer. I had a life-threatening brain tumor the size of a golf ball compressing my brain stem.
I mean, it stops me, just even to hear it again. And personally, I went through it with my wife. Maybe, I lost her at the end of last year, and we went through a year of hell trying to figure out what the hell she had. And the story sounds eerily familiar, with the sense that, why do you think they missed it? Like, what the heck? I hear these stories again and again and again. Are we just hoping against hope it's not something like that? Is it better to just go there and get there first and think you have the worst thing first? Or do people think we're hypochondriacs? I just don't know.
Yeah. And I've shared this, Stephanie and I have talked about this so many times. But first of all, thanks for sharing that, Jim, about that loss. It's hard. And it's hard to even think about those steps that you probably went through and you saw from a caretaker side. And when I answer the question you just laid out, it's, do I think everyone tried to do their best? I do. I think everyone tried to do their best. But I think that it's been really interesting to live through a chapter in our humanity that we had to go through to get to where we're going next, but where we digitized healthcare and we created a lot of noise, and that added to the layers of complexity and didn't do anything for this connection that should be happening. And I think there's a whole bunch of different complex layers to it. And so I think that people tried to do their best. I think that it just was something that I'm hopeful that this next generation of healthcare and with technology, which I have a lot of passion for both, can do better, that there aren't these stories. We want it to be that predictive and be able to have those early diagnoses in order to save lives.
So how'd you get through it?
It was rough. It was, in full disclosure, sometimes, when somebody reads my book, one group invited me to their book club a couple of weeks ago, and I walked in and there's all of these people there and we're going to talk about my book. And I was like, so you read my diary? It's, this vulnerability to it. I tried to share as much as I could in there. And some of it was really ugly and just really authentically weak, because everyone likes to think that they're strong all the time. And I was not. And that's why I wrote Audacious Optimism of it's a choice and sometimes your weakest moments. And so I think that for me, the way that I got through it is to take those steps that I could action on, finding that second opinion and getting it through social media, which is wild. That's the point of contact that ended up leading me to the surgery that saved my life. But then along the way too, it's, coming out of the surgery. So I got to the surgery saved my life, but then it also changed it. I came out with permanent hearing loss, with paralysis, with a lot of other things that were happening. And they told me I wasn't going to get back the paralysis and my facial function on my right side. And so that point I was talking about where I stood in front of that mirror, that was my audacious optimism point. I remember walking back and, this weak person I was staring at, and I grabbed a pen and a paper and I started writing down, I will. And it's like, I will close my eye completely. I will chew with both sides of my mouth. I will walk by myself. I will do these things. And I was determined to put it in front of my reflection and not concentrate on what I wasn't and who I didn't recognize, but who I was and how I could claim that moving forward.
So Stephanie, what compels you in this story? How important is it for us to go tell these stories like we are to change the kind of outcome, or at least the experience Shanna had, to go to 109 doctors and go through that? How can we help?
I think it is the most important thing we can do. I think that one of the things that Shanna and I have talked about, and you used this word even earlier, it's the empowerment that you feel because you believed that you should take care of your own health journey, that you have a right to understanding it, that you have a right to demanding somebody pay attention to it. But none of that effort that you had to put forward should be required. And when we think about things like technology and Jim, even your question that you asked Shanna earlier about why does this happen? What is the reason that we end up with stories like this? And Shanna, you touched on it a bit, but it's that technology should be the thing making it so that these stories don't exist. But instead, what it's doing is getting in the way, because the systems were designed for transaction and they were not designed for experience. And I think, underneath a lot of what we're talking about, if you really take a human-focused design approach, you would not end up with this spaghetti of technology that we have running our healthcare system today. You would make sure that it was oriented to the humans that it was serving. And so I think, Shanna, like you said, probably 800 million reasons you could give for why you ended up in the situation that you were in. But one of those big reasons is the technology that was getting in the way. The solution is the problem. The problem is the solution. So I think that as we start thinking a little differently about what it means to care for a whole human, we're doing really well with introducing, I think, more language and vocabulary that's consumable for people to now be able to advocate for themselves and ask the right kind of educated questions. But there's a lot more education that we need to do, I think, even on conditioning the understanding that we do have that right. Teaching people that they do have that right to that information. They do have a right to the education, that they are worth the time that it takes to explain something that might be complicated. So I think we have to start with just more education around how important we need to take our own health and that we are our own first advocates.
You've always struck me as so different than a lot of the tech execs I've sat at panels with and met, and you were one of the biggest and most important ones in bringing healthcare that way. And I think the general attitude was tech can fix all this, right? And we've seen lots of iterations where deals were done with JP Morgan and Amazon, and we're going to fix it and all this, yada, yada. Meanwhile, you kind of have in a lot of ways. I do feel that. Share a little bit about your experience doing that with this merger the two of you worked on to create, I think, ultimately patient empowerment through technology. I think you've uniquely brought that, and I don't know what motivated you in your personal experience to do that in a different way than most prior execs. There's a lot of questions here. And then how has that navigated you in another area we bond and share, which is tech-enabled marketing and communications, that is almost like a natural flow of what you've been doing. So I'd like to hear a little bit about that from you.
It was funny because, Shanna, when you were talking about how all of your things were at once, I was thinking about how I usually weave that same kind of story a different way to say, we don't always make sense moving forward. Like, our decisions we make may not have a 10-year plan behind them. But if you look backwards, you can usually find themes. So it's not as random as it might feel, right? I think about that like as a green thread. If you look back through my life, it might not seem like a natural conclusion to say, well, how is this technology executive so interested in healthcare? Or, what does that intersection look like? But I began thinking when I went to college, I was going to major in psychology. So I have a degree in psychology, English literature, double minor in philosophy and world religion. Like, what I really learned was that I was a student of humans. Like, that was what I learned, was that all of those things that I was interested in studying were really about understanding how do people think, what makes us tick, what's the psychology behind the way that we make decisions. I went to Carnegie Mellon thinking technology was going to be a hobby, and I studied what ended up becoming human-computer interaction. It wasn't called that then because that label didn't exist, but it was blending that interest in technology with how people think and behave and how do they work and operate. So after almost 2 decades in technology roles, doing things like major cloud transformations for companies across different industries, I felt really far away from the human impact. Infrastructure is so important. All of the technology that sits underneath the solutions that we're talking about is so critical, but it's also like really in the weeds. And so I wanted to see more of the impact on people that this work was doing. So when Oracle was excited about taking a lot of the work we'd done around pandemic solutions and turning it into a real portfolio, I was thrilled to be able to take this kind of interest I've had in humans and well-being and experience and marry it with the work that I've been doing in tech for so long. And then I'm a yoga instructor. So like Shanna said, I think that there is a mind-body connection thing too. I think that there's a thread there that is about movement and working and being in our body, and that being in our body gives us an awareness of what health means and how it connects to our mental health. So I think that's just another one of those threads. So when I had the privilege of launching Oracle Health, I took that human-led approach to the way we thought about technology. And then to your final question, Jim, it's like, what is marketing anymore, right? Marketing is not about forcing people to make decisions or influencing them in non-virtuous ways. To me, marketing is about all of this storytelling that we were just discussing. It's about the language and the words that we can deliver to people in a way that they actually can understand complex concepts, that we are empowering them by giving them right information at the times that they need it. And with as much chaos and noise and the systems that we were talking about getting in the way of good experience, good messages, good content strategies, they can cut through that noise and deliver just the gems that are the ones that are needed to make a difference for people to feel like they're empowered enough to make choices.
It's so cool to hear that. And I relate to a lot of it. So you two have bonded over the foundation. What's the mission of the Oracle Health Foundation, and how are you aligning your mission to that of the current prevailing wisdom in public health currently that we're in? Are you finding mission matches with Maha?
Yeah, I think you can't argue with the mission of Oracle Health Foundation, and one that will keep going forward is removing barriers to healthcare for children around the world. And those barriers are financial. And we've yet to be able to overcome financial barriers for families and children to get access to care. And so, that's something we're hopeful too. And I'm talking now, Jim, as an executive ambassador of Oracle Health Foundation, because I've moved into a bit of a different role with Oracle. But I think something we're hopeful for in the future too is how can this future of AI and this quick year of innovation, which will be the quickest that we've ever experienced in humanity, how can that help us in removing barriers and help us to get these children access? We used to have a slogan years ago, maybe not a slogan, but just kind of this something we talked about within our philanthropic work, where we would say, how do we find the invisible children? And I almost hated to say that out loud, but there are children out there who they don't have access to the things they need to even know how to get the care because they're in a situation or they're in a part of the world. And so those are things where we see that's potential of, and we've seen unlocking in the future to get us to these kids in these communities who really, really need us the most. And it definitely goes hand in hand with this transformation that we are making in healthcare, and one that I feel like we can't move into this next generation of AI with everything bolted on to old technology, but it has to be embedded. And it's such an interesting moment. But I think that it goes side by side with this transformation in healthcare, because what the Oracle Health Foundation will be there to do always is to get kids the access they need to healthcare that they need. And we're doing that to a tune of $3 million a year, helping over 1,000 kids. Over the last 2 decades, we provided $50 million to 19,000 children in 107 countries. So it's there. The need is still there, and it's heavy, and it's going to be there for a while until we can get that point to fix it.
So it's very direct, and it's one kid at a time kind of approach with it. I mean, it sounds like it's high impact. Is there a story you want to share with us all that sort of exemplifies the work of the foundation?
What sets us apart, our differentiator, is that it is one child at a time. These aren't mass grants, and it's anything from a hearing aid to a bone marrow transplant. These are life-changing and sometimes life-saving individual grants that we're providing for these kids. And I think about the very first child that we ever funded, ever. He was a little boy. He was born with fingers fused together. And we helped provide him the funds he needed, his family needed, to get him to the right surgeries over and over again, to have fully functioning fingers and hands. And it's like, you see these stories and these children and what they go through, and, going through things with healthcare, and from hearing aids being considered cosmetic during this whole evolution of what should be covered, what's not, and all of those pieces. There's so many faces and so many names and so many kids. And what's so great about it is that we do have those stories. We're able to share this incredible work, and people feel the impact right away, because when you know a child's name and you see their diagnosis and you see what we're able to do to help them have a healthier tomorrow, you can't deny the impact of a mission like that.
What came first, the Oracle Health Foundation or your own personal journey? Like, what motivated what? How did this all happen? And tell us also a little bit how others can get involved. Is this just Oracle funded, or can other folks give?
Absolutely. Oracle Health Foundation was originated with Cerner, which was the company that Oracle acquired in the second largest acquisition in healthcare IT history. And the foundation was very grassroots when we started, and then it grew up and went global with the corporation and beyond. And we grew and grew and grew into the space straddling the fence of corporate and public nonprofit. And it's like, how do you balance those different pieces? And then as we went through the acquisition, one of the things we quickly learned is that we need to have conversations with Oracle's leadership and make them aware that there is this foundation that's running parallel with the company. And it just completely made sense for what we were doing and the work we were doing, the mission we were leading. And I can say I'm almost 99% sure, because I've looked into this. So I'm like, prove me wrong if it's wrong. But I think we are the only 501c3 nonprofit of its kind to be fully taken on and integrated into an acquisition of this size. And I think that's a testament to where the mission began and a testament to the intention that Oracle has in changing healthcare, because they know that philanthropy is so important to that piece as well. You asked, how do you get involved? I mean, the beauty of this, that we are fully backed by the power of the company. And so we're doing what we're doing and beyond, from pediatric grants to screening children head to toe to make sure they're healthy now and healthy in the future. Volunteering is always the key with us. But we are always in the need of people knowing and being aware of the work we do, because we want people to come to us with a child or someone they know that needs our help.
And who else do you partner with?
We're in 100 schools, specifically in Kansas City. So we have a lot of school partnerships, and we have partnerships globally. We have what we call global partners that we really trust to help make sure that we're identifying the right cases that are vetted and we know where the funds are going. And so a lot of different opportunities that we've had to give to great organizations and be part of their work.
My audience is very much, I would say corporate and providers, payers. I mean, all the different groups would be interesting for some of those partnerships to emerge. But tell us also, are you out speaking a lot about your story in the book now?
I do quite a bit of speaking on the platform of Audacious Optimism. And so it feels like a natural extension of the work that I am in healthcare, and being able to tie those two pieces together is kind of feels like it's my green thread moving forward into my life, Stephanie. And so that feels pretty magical to be able to do that. When I step up on the stage to talk about Audacious Optimism, my goal is always to inspire one person. These stories aren't for you and aren't about you. They're to help somebody else or to help other people move forward. And that's how I always approach that.
So Stephanie, tell me what inspired you and inspires you about Shanna.
What I feel inspired by with Shanna is that she is a warm, kind-hearted, wonderful human being who is very open and collaborative despite having gone through a lot of very challenging and difficult things through her life. And I don't think that it has made her whatsoever jaded. And I think that that is always so beautiful when someone takes something hard. And Jim, knowing you as well, even I feel like what you have gone through this year as well, I could say the same. But when you watch people who take adversity and turn it into resilience and look at a way of approaching life a little bit differently and continue to make their focus on giving to others and making others better, that's just an admirable trait.
I think that sometimes I have moments where I have to kind of look back at different points and think how far I've come, as I even wrote the book and talk on stage. It's like I'm speaking to myself sometimes too, because it's a practice. This becomes a lifelong practice. This becomes an everyday practice to try and live this way, to live optimistically, to make choices that are good for you, to make choices for that future self. And I think that one thing to do is how I really embody everything I talk about in the book, which has that underlying tone of healthcare and advocacy. But with Audacious Optimism, I find myself still taking care of my own health, like constantly pushing to make sure I'm getting the answers I need, seeing the people I need. But then I'm just putting it in other areas, not just healthcare, but making those little pushes, making sure I advocate for myself, making sure I'm making those choices.
While we're on this topic, I want to ask you both, what is the most critical change you'd like to see happen within healthcare?
Well, there was a moment when I had a miscarriage, and I received from the doctor that I had been seeing, who knew that I had a miscarriage, I received a new parent package in the mail. And if you work in technology your whole career, my analytical brain was like, these are two different systems that haven't talked to each other, right? There's a clinical system that knows about my health situation, and there's a system that says, at this point of appointments, this is when you send this package. And those systems weren't talking to each other clearly. So analytically, I knew why this happened. As a human, it broke me. That was like an absolutely fundamental moment for me in my thinking about what we could do to change this healthcare experience. And I think, Shanna, to your point, it's like, even when we're personalizing tiny pieces of the story, this is the difference between a transactional minded system and as an ecosystem, the shift to being human oriented. Because I can tell you as a technologist, someone could make a decision that says, integrating those systems is going to cost X thousands of dollars, and there's a budget, and that's a no. But no one is thinking about the outcome of the fact that those systems haven't been integrated. Whereas if you started from a user experience oriented lens, you would see that the journey required those systems to be integrated, right? So that's where I have that optimism, is because I fully know it is possible, like full stop. Like technology can do this. We are capable of doing it today. And the only thing stopping us is time, people, process, and all of the other shit, right, that gets in the way. It's just a matter of us doing it and getting there.
So do we all have to be a little more patient with this process? It might take some time to work out, because I do think like there is some imperfection to all the systems we work on, but what are the innovations you expect will continue to change things for the better over the next decade?
Well, I would just go back on your original question there about should people be patient? And I actually think that they should be exactly the opposite. They should be completely impatient, because I feel like the push that we give as consumers is the only forcing function that we have going for us in a system that was built for the wrong reasons in the wrong ways. I think the more that we as consumers are being loud about what we expect, and Jim, to your point, like those experiences, they have hiccups, but I think populations that can't advocate for themselves, the more that we are loud about that, I think the more that those process people and the shit that I was talking, those things will have to change.
Absolutely. I'm going to add on that by just saying, Stephanie, you really hit on something a little bit earlier too when you talked about thinking about the user. As I think about my own story and patients like me and patients who are dealing with things that are much, much worse than I ever imagined. But I think how amazing to have such barriers removed to data that they could have known right away. All of these symptoms line up. Oh my gosh, there's 2,000 other people who have these symptoms and got diagnosed with this brain tumor. And just being able to understand and connect things real time versus going through all of this drawn out journey. Some people don't go on a journey for 6 years. Some people don't have the luxury to go on the journey for 6 years. My tumor happened to be not cancerous. And so that's the one saving grace, that it was a small growing non-cancerous tumor. It became life-threatening when it compressed my brainstem, but not everyone has that luxury of time. And that's what I think when you say, Stephanie, we need to be impatient. I think we have to think about time as the one thing that we all want more of that we just can't have. So it's like we need to push on this system, and that's going to change healthcare.
When we launched Oracle Health, the original mission was also about, and I believe this to be true, full stop, for the industry at large, is point of care is going to get increasingly local while increasingly powered by global data and expertise. So the things that need to be measured about you, all of that should be as close to you as it possibly can, whether it's in your home. I mean, in the future, who knows, like a chip in your hand, I don't know, but like it's going to be increasingly powered by the amount of unified data that we have globally and a platform of connection to those experts, regardless of where they live and where you are. So I think that kind of characterization, you can start to imagine all of the things, Shanna, like you were saying, when we can look at things like DNA testing out in the wild, in the field, with DNA sequencers that are like this big now instead of an entire room. Like those kinds of things are the things that changed 3D printing, going from a giant manufacturing floor into a device this big. Those are the kinds of changes that I think are like the science fiction of the past, are really only 5 to 10 years away now.
Absolutely.
So I think, Shanna, if you could go back and tell your younger self at the beginning of the journey, here's one thing to do differently, what would it be?
It would be that I spent 6 years questioning myself and feeling crazy and like I was a hypochondriac. I knew that I should push more, to do more, and to say more. And I would tell myself to do just that, to ask the questions, to be okay with feeling stupid, going back again and again and again, in which I did, but to push more. And that's also a pain point of the industry. It's like, why should I have to be so aggressive for my own health?
Yeah, and we have to get impatient about it. It's the one thing in your story, of all the people I've interviewed, of all the people I've met, obviously my own personal experience with my wife, this is the most connected example. And I really want that to get out there. And I know that's hard for people to do, to trust yourself and advocate for yourself. I don't know why that's the case in the world, but we want this to be very loud. So let's collaborate, let's partner to make sure we get this out there to people. If you catch everything sooner, faster, better, obviously great, important people who do wonderful things in the world can be here to do them. So that's really important. So, okay, we're going to lighten it up. I always ask 2 questions and you both have to answer. First, what is your dream vacation? You go first, Shanna.
Oh, gosh.
On the spot.
On the spot. Okay, I do know mine. My dream vacation, just because I haven't been there, and I feel like I've been quite a few places, but I really have it on my list that in this next year, I'm going to get to Greece, because that's a place where I just have always dreamed about going. So that's my dream vacation. And
okay, wait, finish what you're going to say, but this is wild. Go ahead.
Because that's my dream vacation. And then I just feel like that everyone always says, would you go solo or with kids? And I'm such a family person. I love being around my kids. So I think anytime that I can take them, I do.
Why I was like freaking out when you said that was because we just got back from Scotland, and that my family agreed I get to pick the next vacation because I love Scotland, but the weather, I'm like a lizard, put me on a rock in the sun, I want the heat. And I said Greece. So so we're planning Greece next year. We days ago just had this conversation. So
all right, I have lots of tips. It's fantastic. So you're all on the right track. And then what's your album that you would take if you had to go to a desert island? What would be the one album you'd take?
I'd probably take Hamilton, the musical.
Oh, wow. That's a first. And I totally get it. My daughter knew every word. I remember being in the car and she's like, put it on, put it on, put it on.
Stephanie, don't glare at me when I say this, but I have to go see Hamilton. I think I'm the only human who hasn't seen it. Like, I do know some of the songs, and just because I've heard them so much, and so I need to go and do that. I think I'm going to be totally cliche, and nobody rolled their eyes, but I'm a huge Taylor Swift fan. Stephanie, I know you know this about me. I would probably take all that music, but that has to do, I think, more with just again, I tie things to memories and moments with my daughter. And so that's a joint love that we have together of that. So I think I would take that. So no eye rolling on.
But if you had to pick one Taylor album, isn't that like a really painful?
That is a painful question because that is not possible. So I would have to have the complete set.
All right, well, I have heard that one, and that is not surprising at all. I went to the Eras tour. Audra got to see it with my daughter and me. We got to do that, and it was amazing. So I totally get it. Good choices. Not that we ever make a bad one. It's whatever our choice is. And thanks for that. And thanks for coming back around on something a little lighter. Let's all stay in touch. I love the answer you gave about being impatient. It's actually quite thematic in my own life, and I think a lesson we can all take and make impatience a virtue.
Yeah.
When it comes to the future. I know it's for the right reason. All right, well, thanks all, and we'll see you on the trail.
All right.
Take this show on the road. This was freaking awesome. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me on the Get Real podcast. I hope you feel a little healthier hanging out with me. It's going to be a lot of fun passing this along to others. Please subscribe below. Please share. I'm excited not just to talk about healthcare, but a lot of other fun topics. It's about making healthy talk about healthcare. It's not a lecture. This is supposed to be fun, and look forward to spending more time with you in the future.